Today's daf is daf Mem Ches, and we're talking about the drashos of Sher Ksus V'Ona. And until now, we had opinions this way and that way amongst the Tanoim as to what Sher Ksus V'Ona mean. Now we're introducing a third opinion that takes the word ksusa, which is the middle of this trio of three words, and interprets it in two different ways, kind of like mila el umila ra, moving backwards and moving forwards. Let's explain. Rabbi Eliezer and Yaakov Omer she'era ksusa. Now we're reading the word she'era and ksusa as one phrase, as one entity, and the word ksusa should be understood in the light of the word she'era. Soon we'll see that we're going to take the word ksusa in the light of the word ona. But now, she'era uksusa, lefum she'era tain ksusa. The Torah is telling us that the ksus, the garments which a husband in the framework of marriage is obligated to supply his wife, should be in relationship to she'era, meaning she'era means something to do with womanhood. What does that mean, womanhood? Womanhood can reflect itself in youth and, of course, in older age. And there are certain garments that are more appropriate for older women and those for younger women. So Rabbi Eliezer Yaakov is interpreting the word ksusa in the light of she'era. Shelo yiten la lo shel yalda lizkena v'lo shel zkena liyalda. You should be very careful and choose the right begadim reflecting the age bracket of the wife he's marrying. Again, today in contemporary society, older women like to wear younger women's clothes, but in the old days it wasn't so. An older woman didn't have to prove that she was young. Now, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is going to interpret the word ksusa as connected to onasa. So it has a double meaning. Ksusa v'onasa, lefum onasa tain ksusa. Ona here is being interpreted in connection with ksusa, with begadim, as the ona of the year, the time period of the year, which means lefum onasa tain ksusa, shelo yiten chadoshim b'yamos hachama. The chadoshim are the fresh, newly manufactured garments which keep a person warm. And that's not appropriate for summer wear. V'lo shchakim, well-used clothing, which are thin and therefore more appropriate for the summer months, because they don't have to warm you up, bimos hakcham. Those are not appropriate for the winter months. Tani Rav Yosef, she'era zo kiruv basar. According to Rav Yosef, the word she'era reflects on ona. Ona could be understood in a very mechanical way as a Masechet tashmish. In and out, if you pardon the expression. But she'era tells us no, it's not just in and out. She'era means kiruv basar. There's got to be a chibah. There's got to be an intimacy here. Shelo yinag ba minag parsiim. Apparently, the Parsiim were Parshim, and therefore Mishamshim mitosem belavushehem. They would wear clothes, so there was no kiruv basar. Misayel or Rav Huna, Rav Huna kala omer efshi ela ni bebigdi v'hi bebigda. He's a very pious person, so he wants precious, and he wants to limit and restrict the amount of pleasure in the sexual act. So what does he do? He says, you know what? I'm going to wear my clothes, she'll wear her clothes, and we'll do it mechanically. That's grounds for divorce. Yotzi v'nosei ksuba. If she says, that's it, I can't live on this level of tznius, of modesty, I want a divorce from this husband, that is grounds for divorce, and we will force him to divorce his wife, and he will pay the ksuba to boot. Of Yehuda, now we go back to the Mishnah of Yehuda says, Afilu ani b'Yisrael. if a person is poor and never his wife passed away and he has to bury her, there is a barest minimum of how much money even a poor person is required to spend as an outlay for an honorable burial. You know, back in the day, you would have to buy a kever, and there were options which were less expensive of kvura. You know, they put you into a little cubicle. I told my wife I don't mind as long as there's air conditioning inside. It's very cramped. They pile it one on top of the other. You have to pay for that, and you get it cheaper. So he's an ani. He has a right to say, I'll bury my wife in the less expensive kvura. But there is, says Rabbi Yehuda, a barest minimum. He's got to buy 2 chalilim, or at least hire them, and a mekonenes. Now the Gemara wants to understand, apparently the Chachamim were not on board. They didn't require this minimum. This was the unique sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. And now the Gemara goes into a question about what's called Ola Ima V'Eino Yeredesima. There's a principle that he has to live up to the standards that she's used to. The question is whether that applies after she dies in the context of Kvura. So the Gemara's Medaik, Michal Tanakam Sover Hani Lo. The Tanakama holds that he's not even chayav in anything but the Gufa Kvura, the actual act of burial, whatever that entails, and whatever money it might expenditures, that's it. But no chalilim and no mekonenes. Echidami. The Gemara applies in Mimanafsha. Take one extreme, take another extreme. One extreme is Idi Urchai. If that's the way the Bnos Yisrael in her family require this minimum amount of the Shnei Chalilim and the Mekonenes, is then I don't understand Tanakama. My time in Tanakama, the Yom Lo, we have a principle of Ola Ima, that he has to give her the barest standards of her family background according to her sociological strata in society. And if in her family they are also very poor, they don't even have this accepted custom of hiring the Chalilim and the Mekonenes, then my time the Rabbi Yehuda, why would Rabbi Yehuda say that this ani has to beg on, and knock on doors, panhandle, in order to give something that's above the standard of this woman? So we have to find some sort of middle ground, which could be interpreted and pulled in two different directions to explain this machlokes between the Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda. Well, tzricha could go the orchei didei v'lav orchei didei. In her family, basic guf hakfura, no frills, no additions. But in his family, they are used to a custom that requires a higher standard of kfura. Usually what the law is in ksuba is that we raise her up to the level of her husband's financial strata or minhagim of that family. The ksuba is only collectible during his lifetime or immediately when he dies, but he didn't die. Baruch Hashem, she's alive. He's alive, but she died. And liachar misa, there's no chiyuv ksuba, except to bury his wife. But he give her the various burial, nothing more sophisticated. Liachar misa lo. But the Yehuda Savra, afil lachar misa, the halacha of Maila Imo, that we go up to the standards of the husband, applies even after her death, when the ksuba is no longer, shall we say, active, because the kvura itself is part of the ksuba, says Rabbi Yehuda. And therefore, all the rules that regulate ksuba apply even after her death. On those rare occasions that we paskin against the rove in favor of the minority opinion, in order to guarantee a woman the honorable, the basic honorable kvura that his family is used to. Now we get into the question of a man who is not capable of giving us an answer to the question as to what level of parnasa he would want to give his wife within the context of marriage. Two cases where he's incapable of answering our query. He lost it. He's deranged now. Now, we have to support his wife. But the question is he interested in supporting his children, his boys and his girls? And as surprising as this is to us, the Chi of Ksuba obligates him in Mizonos Ishto, but not Mizonos Banov Ubenosa. Is therefore Bezdin Yordin L'Nechaso, Vizonin. So now Bezdin is going to, on its own initiative, take money from his bank account and support his wife. But not only his wife, the farnasim is Ishto Ubanov Ubenosa. We are going to analyze the mind of someone who's not capable of telling us what his real desire is. And we believe, says Rabbi Chisda, that if he were capable and if he were sane, he would instruct us to take his funds and support his children. Udavarach. Those two words make no sense. The Gemara is going to pick that up later. Amalei Ravina Ravashi. If that be the case, you're analyzing, we call this an umdana, if you remember that term, the mindset of a person that he would want not only to support his wife, but also his children. Then what happens if a man is not insane, but he's just inaccessible? We can't get a hold of him. We don't have the social media. We don't have phone conversations with him or WhatsApp conversations. He's out there in the seven seas. We're going to assume that he wants to support his wife, but only his wife. What's the difference between a case of nishtata and we shots up and evaluate that he wants to support his children, and the case of holach limedina sayam, where we say no, he only wants to support his wife but not his children? I'm surprised at your question. This obvious distinction between the two cases. When a person decides to go to Medina Sayyam, that's his own decision. If he wanted to support his children, he should have given us a mandate and tell Bezdin, please, in my absence, support my children. He didn't say so. He didn't leave word. He should have signed a document. He should have communicated with Bezdin. What does this have to do with the case of the Nishtata? The Nishtata is something, he lost it. He didn't plan that on such a date on his calendar. He X'd it out. I'm going to go nuts. Therefore, we shots up his mindset. We assume that he belongs to the Rov, and Rov of the Olam, Minastam, would want to be Mefarnes, his own children from his Nechas. What's this Dover Acher? Rabbi Chisda Omar, according to Rabbi Chisda, Tachshit. Tachshit means certain kinds of fragrant cosmetics that women wear. They put on their body in order to give them a nice fragrant odor. Problem in our society, if you ask me, is that they put on too much of that stuff. you ever get into an elevator and you want to just run out because you can't tolerate the smell? All right. Rav Yosef Amar Tzedakah. Now, let's think about Davar. It says in the statement of Rav Chizda that Mefarneset is Ishto Banov Ubnosov Vidavar. In the case of Holach Bailul Abdida Sayav, Avalo Banov Ubnosov Velo Davar. Rav Chizda understands that Davar Acher is a reference to his wife and to the amount of funds that Beis Din will take from his estate for the benefit of his wife. And Davar Acher in this context means those besamim shehanoshim miskashtos bahem. And the assumption is that most men would want their wives to present themselves in a nice way. You know, this is the whole issue about covering your head. You know, you want your wife to wear a sheitel, you want to wear a kupka, you know, a head cover, you know, all this kind of stuff. In Chabad, they have one sheet. Anyway, you leave that out, right? So the assumption is that Rov B'nai Adam would want their wives to look presentable. This guy never lost it. He's a shota, and we're going to assume that he wants to take money from his, if he were sane and capable of telling us, in order to make his wife. However, if he went out to Medina Sayyam, he should have specified. Apparently, these psalmim are not, kind of expensive. There's significant amounts of funds. He should have mentioned it. Rav Yosef Amar Tzedakah. You know what this Davar Acher is about? This halacha of poskim tzedakah al b'nei ha'ir. This is sugyas about basra. And there's certain amounts of monies that have to be collected for the community chest, for the benefit of charity organizations and so forth. And we assume that most people would want to participate. He was nishtated. But again, if he had to run away on a business trip, and he prepared for the business trip, he put together all his, he should have made a statement, you know what, collect from my account, kach v'kach. He didn't say so. In the case of a person who went to Medina Sayyam, and we're going to say that he should have specified and stipulated that he wants money earmarked for his wife's besamim, and we're going to say no. He didn't want to give money for his wife's besamim. He would have specified if he had interest in it. How much more so tzedakah? We're not going to be able to take money from his account for tzedakah, but man diyomer tzedakah aval tachshid yabinei lo nichalei l'tisal. Case of tzedakah, very nice. It's good to give money. Charity is a great thing, but he didn't specify. He should have told us. You know, it reminds me, I don't know if you gentlemen get the same kind of cards I get before Purim. You know, so much and so much money has been designated for a charity organization. What's it called, Leket or something? I forget the name of the organization. I always get it, you know. In lieu of Mishloach Manos Ish L'Reyehu. Okay, yeah. What shall I say? Am I excited about it? It depends. You know, if they're giving me Mishloach Manos of Chametz, then my wife and I feel thanks, but no thanks. But sometimes you get a really nice Mishloach Manos. Once I got a beautiful Mishloach Manos from Talmidim of mine, and it was all wrapped up beautifully. You know, they went to these professional places. I don't know, probably cost them 300 shekel. I don't know what they paid. And accidentally, we left it there until Pesach. On Pesach, we decided, you know, what's going on? This Mishloach Manos here. We take a look inside. It's got elite wafers. Oh my God. Turns out it was kidneys. Okay, there's no Bayura by Moitza and Kitnius. We didn't need it, but we put it away. So the Gemara is saying like this: if we have to analyze the absence of his instruction in the case of Yotzel of Dinas Hayam, we would say the following: that really, in truth, he wants to make sure his wife looks nice, and he wants her to have these besom. It's not good. Maybe yes, maybe no. He should have told us, and he didn't tell us. The man is out there in Medina Sayyam, and his wife died. So now the question is Kvura. What level of Kvura, in today's society, we ask, where are you going to bury him? You're going to bury him in Yerushalayim, you're going to bury Beit Shemesh, where are you going to get buried, right? So Bezdin Yarden L'nechasav v'kovrin osa lefich fodo. What does that mean, lefich fodo? According to his standard, his status. Lefich fodo v'lo lefich fodo? What are you talking about? If in Har Mishpacha they used to, hire Mekononos or Chalilim, then for sure he would have to use his money to pay for such a kvura. Our answer is Ema af lefich lo. Even if her family does not have that high standard of burial, of that status of society, but his family has it, he's got to shell out. Why? Even after her death, the halach is Ola Imo. She goes up to his financial status. Or of Masna, ha Omer im Mesa Lotik Barua Minachasav Shominlo. A man's wife passes on and he makes a statement, don't bury her from my nechasim. It means that he died, but before he died, he left the last will and testament. He says, don't bury her from my nechasim. So what's Shomer? The answer is, the moment he dies, she collects her ksuba. And the moment she collects her ksuba, he no longer has any obligations within the context of ksuba. So he's basically just certifying what his obligations are. So Gemara asks Akasha, why do we need him to make this statement? Even in the absence of this statement, same exact halacha would apply. Maishna Ki Omar, if a Baal says explicitly that he doesn't want his wife to be buried after his death, when she dies later from his nechasim, then nafli nichsei kamit yasm. Because immediately with his death, the nechasim fall to his heirs, his children. They're not obligated to bury their mother. Or alternatively, the widow of their wife. Is kilo omar hachinami nichsei kami yasmi ramu. The process of Yerusha is memela. It happens automatically. We don't have to ask him, well, what would you want to do with the nechasim after your death? After his death, the nechasim automatically transfer into the ownership of his heirs, of his children. So why do we need him to make that statement, that declaration? Ella, this is what Rav Masna had in mind. Ha'omer, if a man makes a declaration in Mace who, he's speaking about himself in third person. If he dies, you understand what's going on? He didn't want to say, if I die. Lo tikvaru min achasav. The man says, I don't want my estate to be depleted for the sake of my burial. I want my heirs, my children, to get the entire estate. Let the tzedakah, the charity organizations, take care of my burial. I want to beef up the amount of money that my children will inherit. And here we change the language of Rav Masechet. Ain Shomin. We're not going to listen to it. We're going to take from the nechasim of the estate of the Yerusha in order to bury him. The lav kol heminu sheyasher is going to be apel asmat tzibur. He doesn't have the power legally to guarantee the wealth of his children at the expense of the community funds. And now we're up to the Mishnah that starts on the bottom of Daf Mem Ches Amud Aleph with the words Li Olam Hi B'Rshus Ha'av Ad Shetikanes L'Rshus